Hello, and welcome to September's episode of Let's Talk Oregon. I'm your host, Mike Ducett. Today, we have a very special episode as we're breaking from tradition of our normally having two guests on the show to having a single very important guest. On our show today, we are joined by Miss Jenna Jacobson, our Assembly representative for the Wisconsin State Legislature, and we're excited to ask her some questions all about Oregon and politics here in the state of Wisconsin. So, first of all, welcome to the show, Ms. Jacobson. It's really nice to see you. We're delighted to have you here.
Thank you for
Thanks
having
for
me.
taking the time to talk with us.
Yeah.
And can you just quick give our viewers an introduction about yourself and how it is you came to be a representative for this area, for the state of Wisconsin?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
So my journey in politics started right here in the village of Oregon. I decided to run for the village board back in late 2016, early 2017. I was a stay-at-home mom. I thought I had additional time on my hands, but spoiler alert, I did not.
Of course.
Yeah, and just wanted to serve my community more. And so I ran for the village board for the first time and really found a passion for helping my neighbors, supporting them in the ways that they needed support and listening to folks. And that really kind of catapulted me into the assembly when the maps opened up and changed in 2022. And we didn't have an incumbent in this district. I decided, hey, let's try and see what happens. So.
And you were successful,
Yeah.
obviously, as you're sitting here today.
Yeah.
So it was just kind of a drive to give back to the community, and now you're giving back to the community even in a larger way, which I think is fantastic. What did you learn, I guess, running for these positions through the election process? What's that like for our viewers to kind of understand?
Well, it is a lot of hard work, but in the best of ways. So you spend a lot of time getting out and talking to the people around the district, whether you're talking about local politics and village board level. Hearing from folks is the best way to do your job, I believe. So getting out and talking to folks, meeting them where they're at. So that's a lot of knocking on doors, going to community events, learning what are the issues that are most important to folks, going to village board meetings, town meetings, school board meetings, and again, learning what are the very real issues that people are facing from a day-to-day standpoint and where the state can step in and help and where they potentially need to back off and let people, use the tools and resources that they have to do the work. So
That's great. And can you just give our viewers a little reminder of what towns and the communities you are serving currently?
So under the 2022 electoral maps, I was elected to the 43rd Assembly District, which was the southeastern portions of Dane County and the northwestern corner of Rock County, as well as the portion of Brooklyn, the village of Brooklyn, that is in Greene County. When the maps changed in February, the district changed as well, and the 50th Assembly District is the southwestern corner of Dane County, so the townships of Montrose, Perry, Springdale, the town of Oregon, and the town of Primrose, and then all of Greene County.
Nice. So that's quite a bit of an expansion, actually, too.
Yes.
That's great.
Large.
So as you kind of foreshadowed, so Wisconsin has made some national headlines lately regarding the Wisconsin congressional district mapping and gerrymandering, and those maps kind of being overturned, and the Supreme Court saying that they were unconstitutional. So you've kind of foreshadowed the changes for our own district. What impact do you expect this to have kind of statewide, not just in those towns in which you are representing, but just the state map overall? What kind of impacts can we expect to see?
So the hope with fair maps is that we're going to have a legislature that is more responsive to their constituents. So the idea is that we will see movement on issues that Wisconsinites have overwhelmingly said are important to them, but we haven't seen movement on in the state legislature. So think of protecting reproductive rights. We are currently, when the Roe was repealed, we had an 1849 law that went into play that blocked the woman's right to choose if and when she was going to have a family. And then a Dane County judge halted that law, but we're kind of in this limbo where it's allowed, but we'd like to see that codified into law because we know that the majority of Wisconsinites want to make sure that women have the right to choose what they're going to be doing with their body and have access to the health care that they need when they need it. Additionally, I think of marijuana. It's whether you're talking about medicinal only or recreational as well, that is a big issue that Wisconsinites overwhelmingly want to see movement on. We're surrounded by states that have legalized marijuana consumption to varying degrees, and that would be another issue that we could potentially see movement on. Badger care expansion. So we are one of, I believe, 10 states now that haven't taken the Badger care the federal money for Medicare expansion. So expanding Badger care so that more folks have access to affordable health care, it would be another issue that we could potentially see some movement on.
Right, so because Wisconsin has somewhat been a little bit of an anomaly in the sense that we tend to run purple. Obviously, we're a swing state. If anybody's watching at home, we know we're seeing a million political ads every night.
Yeah.
But in the sense that many of our local elections were staying to one side, to the conservative side, but our national and statewide elections were running more Democratic towards Tony Evers and Tammy Baldwin's reelection. So in this shuffling of the maps, you think we'll see more of an even distribution within the Wisconsin legislature?
Yeah, so the way they're, I don't want to say designed, I think the idea, because we are such a swing state, is that when we see political shifts in our state, as we have been known to do, that those shifts will be reflected in the legislature. So currently the assembly breakup in the chamber that I'm in had 35 Democrats and 64 Republicans for a total of 99 representatives, and that's not that doesn't reflect the overall vote share that Democrats and Republicans tend to get in the state. So again, having a representative breakdown that is more accurate to what the state is experiencing and voting on, I think will hopefully get us some more movement on these
Well,
issues.
It'll be interesting to see how this all plays out this fall, first time of these new maps. So what do you feel in our current district here in Oregon and other communities which you've listed, what are our most pressing issues for the state, for the district we're in, and what should we as citizens really start to pay more attention to?
Yeah. Well, I think the number one thing that I'm hearing when I'm talking to folks on doors is that they want to see bipartisanship. You mentioned the political ads earlier. People are sick of the acrimonious nature of our politics. They're sick of the divide. I think everybody understands that in order for us to get real change done, we have to work together. We have to put differences aside and work on the issues that we can find some common ground on. So that's probably been the number one issue that I hear about from folks. I would say number two is to go back to reproductive rights, making sure that the women have autonomy over their bodies and their future. I think an issue that is particularly present to Oregon would be shared revenue. That's an issue that we talked a lot about last year. There was some movement on communities where they did receive more funding from the state, but we also know that the Village of Oregon is currently looking at a referendum for operating expenses because we are still capped in many ways by the state for how we fund things or where we're expected to spend all of our money that we receive. And so that's going to be an issue that continues to come up, I think, in this next biennium. Right.
And as we talk about, we have questions coming up a little bit later about crossing the aisle, but what would you say to folks who would normally vote for you? Like, what do you think the common ground we're going to find is to close that gap?
For every person, it's different. And I think the thing that I strive for is to have that conversation, to hear folks out, find whatever that common ground is. But for each person, it's different. We can, one person we might be agreeing on education. One person we might be agreeing on local control and support for our communities. It just really varies, and I think that's why taking the time to talk to people individually is so important because while you can see trends throughout the district, each person is going to have an issue that they're most passionate about, and even if some of those issues are the same, their why or how they come to that conclusion is going to be different. So hearing that, to my mind, is very important.
Keeping those lines of communication open is super, super important.
Yeah. So
obviously, if you're living under a rock, you would not know that we have an election coming here in November of 2024. From all I've been hearing from reports I've seen is that the voter turnout is gearing up to be kind of another record turnout. 2020 was a record, and we're anticipating and breaking that record. And new voter registration has made some tremendous growth in certain key demographics. And one that I'm focusing on right now is, obviously, because I'm a high school teacher, right? That idea of our newly turned 18-year-olds who are going to be voting and up to 25. That's been a big boon in voter registration in those areas. So what advice would you give to someone who's new to voting to be looking for? What should they be looking for in a candidate? And what kind of steps are you taking to help engage that voting bloc that is coming into age and kind of experiencing voting for the first time?
Yeah, well, I love this question because I think engaging our kids is so important. I mean, and not just because I have 3 kids, although they aren't of voting age yet, but it's been something I've been really passionate about in office, is getting more people involved at all ages, because just because you're a kid and you don't vote doesn't mean you don't have opinions on what you want to see in your future, right? So I would say, as far as how to look up candidate, if you can, reach out to the candidate, send them an email, call them if you have that option. But try to find somebody whose values you share. You know, think about the things that are important to you, and then ask those questions of the candidates. We should all be answering those, right? That's whether you're a voter or not, we still represent you. Whether you voted for us or not, we still represent in the district. So, so I would say just ask those questions. And for my what I do to encourage folks to get involved at any age, but specifically for younger folks, I say, if you're not certain about a specific candidate, find a topic that you're really passionate about. You know, climate change is a huge one that I've worked with some youth that have volunteered on our campaign and in our office. If it's a topic that you're passionate about, go for it. There's lots of organizations around that are working politically in those spaces that you can connect with and work to kind of understand that political landscape and where you can help make change.
Right. And your vote is important, and it does matter, even if you don't agree with perhaps everything, right? It's important to make your voice heard and to use that vote. And where do you see right now in the state of Wisconsin, do you know where we're making the most growth in terms of our voter registration? What key demographics are we focusing on as a state?
As far as what is in actual growth, I don't know that information. But I will say, you know, there are organizations out there that are constantly working to sign people up, get them registered to vote, help them come up with a plan to vote, help fight for making voting more accessible, because it isn't very accessible to everybody, right? You know, you think of certain communities don't have access to multiple polling places, or not polling places, but multiple ways to get your ID. Maybe you just have one DMV location in your county, for example, and you need that to get to your polling place, right? So I think however we can make voting more accessible is going to be helpful in getting that turnout. There isn't a lot we can do for this election, but that's something we should always be working on.
And Wisconsin still does have same-day voter registration, correct? So that is something that is unique for our state, that you are allowed to show proof of residency in your current home and bring an ID, and you can register to vote at the polls, which I think is really important information for people to keep in mind. So we're going to come back to you in just a second. We're going to throw it to the break, and we'll be back in the second half of the show with more questions for Ms. Jenna Jacobson. Thanks.
How much difference can one vote make? Since 2023, more than 60 U.S. elections have been tied or won by just one vote. So this fall, your friend could be the tiebreaker. And that could make all the difference. People are more likely to vote when encouraged by a friend. So use your power to decide this election. Make sure you're good to vote and encourage your friends to make a voting plan at votevotevote.com.
day, thousands of kids start vaping. And I can't let this happen to my kid. Of course, it's awkward to talk to your kids about the dangers of vaping. Hey, bestie, how sketch is me? It's hard to get their attention. Ready? Go. Yes. Look at that. You even turn yours over. So if you want to talk to your kids about the dangers of vaping, you got to get it trending.
No, you're doing it wrong.
Let's go.
Can we talk?
Yeah, what's up?
Visit talkaboutvaping.org for tips on when and how to have the vape talk.
Food isn't just fuel to live, it's fuel to grow. My family relied on public assistance to help provide meals for us. These meals fueled my involvement in theater and the arts as a child, which fostered my love for acting. The Feeding America network of food banks helps millions of people put food on the table. When people are fed, futures are nourished. Join the movement to end hunger, and together we can open endless possibilities for people to thrive. Visit feedingamerica.org/actnow.
All right, welcome back from the break. Again, we're here with our guest, our chief guest today, our only guest today, our representative, Miss Jenna Jacobson. Welcome back from the break. So I did a little researching and Googling like a good show host is supposed to do, and I've seen that you've received some awards and accolades recently. The most recent one was the Conservation Champion Award. So can you tell our audience, like, what did you do to achieve this award? And further than, what do you see as your role in really kind of protecting the landscapes and the environments here in Wisconsin?
Yeah. So I was very excited to be a Wisconsin Conservation Champion, and I received that award because of the legislation that I chose to support. And a lot of that legislation not only is based on my own personal beliefs and protecting our climate and working on healing some of the damage that we've done to it, but in also responding to my constituents. And we have a lot of contacts from folks who are concerned about climate and wanting to see the state do more for addressing climate change. So I've been proud to support multiple bills, whether we're talking about the Green Amendment that was introduced at the end of last session, or we're talking about increasing funds for our Watershed Protection Program, which is a farmer-led program that encourages different techniques, different plantings to help help decrease runoff and protecting our watersheds. So there's a lot of different programs and bills that may not have passed necessarily, but we're working on pushing forward to make sure that Wisconsin is addressing the climate issue as best they can. So.
Yeah, we have a lot of unique natural areas even within your district that are wonderful resources that we need to protect. And when you speak of like the climate issues, what do you think in terms of that? What should we be most wary for within Dane County, within your district? Like, what do you think is having the biggest effect on our environment? I guess I should say.
I think I don't think there's one issue, one thing that is driving climate more than another, but I think that it's important that when we're looking at climate change, we're taking a wide approach and tackling it from all lenses. So whether we're talking about reevaluating how we manage water because we've had so many large rain events, whether we're looking at transportation and how we're going to be encouraging different types of transportation, not just personal vehicles, and also how we're working with other groups. So I just talking about reaching out to or hearing from constituents. I just talked with somebody who wanted to talk more about farming and the intersection, that's the word I'm thinking of, between farming and our environment. And I think a lot of people don't realize the work that our farming community, our agriculture community is doing on the climate front. And that's a huge issue as well because we are such a large agricultural state. So there's a lot of ways that we can be working on the climate issue. And I think, we kind of got to it's a full frontal attack kind of
That's a
thing.
really important conversation that obviously needs to keep going.
Yeah.
So we touched upon this a little bit in the first segment, but we're talking about the polarization, and even in the state of Wisconsin, we certainly feel that polarization. Even in your district, I'm sure you feel that polarization. So the last 2 election cycles have really kind of set the tone for that sense of polarization. So what steps do you think must be taken to really reduce that heightened polarization and the political rhetoric that is creating division, is creating political violence? Where do you see that as an onus on the citizens, on people that are running for office, et cetera?
Yeah, I think, political polarization, I think the best way to work on that or mitigate that is with relationships, right? So whether it's talking to somebody on a doorstep that I wouldn't necessarily always agree with, but still hearing them out, or learning about an issue that maybe wasn't on my radar previously because I didn't know about it or because I didn't understand as much, but wanting to learn more because a constituent brought that up to me. I think all those things, listening first, and then taking that approach of learning is going to be really helpful when we talk about political polarization. But I think as far as what we can do as a community, part of that is listening to each other, neighbor to neighbor. I think also encouraging our candidates, being very clear what we want to see from them. When it's September and we are inundated with political attack ads already, and they're there because people have the perception that they work. Well, let's talk to our candidates about seeing something different. I want to hear what you're for, not these other things. And I think it'll take time, unfortunately. I think we'd all like to see it move faster, but it's a cultural shift that I think is worth it if we just keep at it, keep listening to each other, and keep communicating what we want to see.
I think it's a delicate balance too, because I think a lot of times our own values of our freedom of speech can work against us in a lot of ways. That a lot of speech can happen that is posted that's not truthful, that's not that could be motivated one way or the other, and it's really important as citizens of this country that we value that freedom of speech, but we also are very critical of what we see, what we read, and what we believe, and to really take the time and onus to really kind of examine our own belief statements and find where the truth lies.
Yeah.
Because the truth today sometimes can be questioned, and I think that's a consequence of the last couple of election cycles. So enough grandstanding there, I should say, but what major legislative initiatives or projects are you currently working towards? Do you have your names attached to any bills that you'd like to highlight at this point? Or how are you working across the aisle with other people? What are you trying to achieve in the next or upcoming legislative session?
So I mentioned the Green Amendment, and what that is a constitutional amendment or a state constitutional amendment that would guarantee everybody have the access to clean air, safe drinking water, and healthy soils. And that would be a right built into our Constitution that then we would use as a guidepost for other legislation. I have also written a bill called the Farming Forward Bill that is working on transitions between existing farmers and people who want to get into farming, because one of the things we know is that farming is a very capital-intensive business.
Yeah.
And it's hard to get into, and yet I think of just nearby, we're surrounded by multiple different types of agriculture, whether it's CSAs, whether it's, we had a mushroom farm in the district for a while, it's kind of neat, or small animal farms. There's lots of different types of agriculture that we can be supporting and nurturing as people want to get into agriculture. Another bill actually stemmed from my experience here in Oregon as the chair of the Personnel and Public Safety Committee. Our law enforcement department was accredited. And I got to learn probably not nearly as much as our accreditation groups would know, but I got to learn quite a bit about that and what that means to our department and our village. And I thought it was such a great program that I have written a bill that creates a grant program to support other agencies who want to go through that process.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Now, none of these have passed yet, but I'm also in my first term, and I've been told it takes 2 or 3 to get your
the
first
old
one
adage
passed
of you don't want
called
to see how the sausage is made, I think is truthful at times, right?
Yeah,
I'm sure it's a laborious process that takes many, many revisions, many, many edits, and many, many conversations across the board.
It's true, but I am pleased to say that both of those bills that I just highlighted are bipartisan, which is something that I, again, am striving a lot for.
Yeah, especially if you're, if the new 50th district, as you've foreshadowed, is encompassing all of Greene County. We got to protect the cheese.
Yes, we do.
Greene County is one of my favorite counties in the state of Wisconsin, folks. I've been down there a couple times, and I went to the National Historic Cheese Making Museum. Have you visited that yet?
I haven't yet.
I will put that on your agenda because it's just it's so fun to see some folks really passionate about the history of the dairy farms in Greene County specifically, and how much of a game changer that was.
And have you been
across
to
the nation.
Cheese Days? Because that's Cheese Days year.
I have not been to Cheese Days yet, so maybe that'll be on my
Okay, you
agenda.
got like 2 weeks.
2 weeks, okay, and I know Greene County has more dairies per capita than any other county in Wisconsin, so it's really important to protect those. So just for fun, can you give us an example of a time where you have kind of reached across the aisle to a favorite colleague or a fun colleague in some kind of a fun way to kind of embrace the spirit of togetherness in favor of the state of Wisconsin?
Well, the story that comes to mind isn't my personal story as far as writing the bill, but we took up a bill last session that would have made the old-fashioned the state cocktail, and the floor discussion was by far some of the best discussion I think that we had all session. Bipartisan folks standing up in favor of this bill really took time to appreciate the fun that you can have supporting your state, and I would encourage anybody who's interested to go to check out because all the testimonies online, to just if you want to hear a good couple of speeches about old fashions.
And I have a couple follow-up questions. Was this a brandy old fashioned sweet? Or is that where the hang-up was? So those whiskey folks out there?
Yeah, no.
A little too divisive, I guess, right?
That was most of the conversation was why are we going so broad and just accepting all old fashions? In fact, I even learned that some people put olives on their old fashions.
Oh.
I know, I was surprised.
To
I'll
each
put it
his
that
own,
way.
right?
Right. Yeah. If you like it and you're drinking it, it's fine by me. But so I think that was part of the fun of the discussion was hearing people discuss. Something so simple as a state cocktail is viewed so differently throughout our state, and I think that is a great representation of how we all can look at one issue and come up with different
we have
ideas.
so many unique cultural aspects of Wisconsin that obviously we cherish. Those from outside the Midwest give us a little funny looks every now and then, but that's okay. And if I could put a yard sign for a brandy old fashioned in my lawn, that's one sign I would definitely put on my block for sure. So this has been a great conversation. So thank you so much for taking the time again to come and speak with us. Good luck with your upcoming election. And folks, if you need information, I'm sure you have a website. Just Google Representative Jenna Jacobson. That'll come right up. Send her an email, reach out, and make your voice heard. So that's all we have time for on Let's Talk Oregon. We'll see you next month in October. Thank you and have a great day.